Is World of Warcraft dead? Is it really? I mean, we've been looking at a lot of the comments for the past month or so in a lot of the videos, and it seems like, judging from reactions on the internet, that World of Warcraft is once again dead. Now, there is some grain of truth to that, and we'll cover a couple of things to at least clarify where we stand on the matter. Because there is something to be said when it comes to like World of Warcraft today. I mean, it's so good, but it has some flaws that I think it stemmed down from the past, and it kind of like still feels nasty right now. And I understand like why some people would be like, okay, well, there's really nothing for me to do, or I've done everything that I wanted to do. There's no more incentive. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's just get right into it. Talk about what are like the reasons why some folks would actually feel, maybe you're among them, like why would you feel that World of Warcraft is dead currently? I mean, Dragonflight is, I think their best expansion yet.
Yeah, in terms of design, I think if we look at it, you know, from an objective perspective, in terms of game design, I think this is the best expansion design so far. Yeah. We're talking about pure systems, pure classes, leveling process, talent design, class design, spec design, professions, content. We have more content. All the content that was kind of poop before, it's kind of made a little bit better and bearable. Like World Quest, for instance, I didn't really have an issue playing World Quest. I was actually more incentivized to be in the world, open world stuff. Like all of that is good, but I think there's something missing. And from, you know, because we've been doing this ever since the early alphas and everything, I couldn't really put my finger into it until I just, you know,
put your finger into it?
On it. Listen, it's fine. Don't think about that kind of stuff. But for me, and I felt it after probably playing my Evoker, is the, I guess soul is a little bit too dramatic, but the soul of Warcraft is not there anymore. Although it looks like Warcraft, it sounds like Warcraft, it kind of maybe feels like Warcraft, but the soul isn't there. For me, it's the personality that always attracted me to the game. And I would imagine that a lot of people might feel this way. I think Bellular made a video about it that kind of pointed out some more, you know, specific things, but I feel like they kind of revolve around the same concept.
I think, yeah, for the most part, for all the wins Dragonflight has gained through all of the patches, and we are looking at a great cadence of content and things to do or whatever, it kind of missed out on a couple of relatable stuff. Like, for example, patch 10.1, like when you go to the Zaralak Caverns, right? Like the zone is gorgeous or whatever. It's a unique place where you are basically underground. You don't see the skyline or nothing like that.
Yeah.
But the main folks over there, like the little mole people or whatever, totally not relatable. They're not relatable. It's same as like with the dragons. Like dragons are cool to fight in fantasies, to ride them or whatever. I feel they didn't really do any sort of like story driven content that would be 100% relatable to your average World of Warcraft aficionado.
Yeah, there are a couple of good things when it comes to story, but sadly enough, they don't really have any direct correlation with the caverns.
Yeah, I mean, not going into lore heavy stuff here, just pure context. Okay, what traditionally big patches like 10.1 would bring a lot of people back into the game, right? So you start off with the expansion. The next big patch of an expansion will bring a lot of people who, like, after they consume 1 month or two of the expansion, they would just take it easy.
I think the point that you make is actually really good with Zaralak Cavern, because it's something that personally I've been saying for a long time. They keep adding more and more factions and more races, and although that's cool, they don't have enough time to build them up for us to care about them. And what they actually did right in 10.0 is that they brought old races back. The Centaur, maybe a different tribe of Centaurs, right? And the Tuskars, we knew them. They already had a history built up, especially Centaurs, which was a controversial history, especially with the Torrents. The questline with Bane, that was really Warcrafty. There were some Warcrafty moments, but I feel like those were side quests instead of being like the main quest. And whenever they keep adding new races, like they don't have enough time to pre-establish the world and build the world up, because the world that we kind of fell in love with back in, you know, Classic, TBC, Wrath, whenever you started to play WoW, was kind of built from the ground up from, you know, Warcraft 1, 2, 3, depending on when you started. So you knew, oh, these are the humans, those are the orcs. So we know what they do, what they stand for and stuff like that. But when it comes to like these new zones, when they keep adding them, they don't have a lot to them. And I guess they could have done really well with the mole people if they just expanded more on the story. Maybe have a more dramatic interaction between them and Farok. Whenever Farok comes in like blast, like we just put out a couple of fires, one or two of them die, and oh no, okay, but that's it, and then it stops, and then there's like nothing else going on.
Yeah, the story and context aside, there's also the fact that, you know, for your average player, okay, not excluding us here, because we're trying to like do like the best of content as we can, and also make some other content on YouTube about it. But the majority of players aren't actually like us too, probably, and not a lot of people maybe are aware of this, but I think the big majority of the player base is a lot more casual, which is 100% fine. Nobody's like telling you how to play. But if you think about that, you have to put into parallel the new gearing system. Now, the new gearing system for people like us is really cool. It's really fine. There's still work to be done on it, but
yeah,
damn,
sure.
it covers a lot of like previous holes or missing patches from like how you would gear in the past. I still see to this day people do not understand how that gearing system works, and I do feel they had made a poor job on at least communicating and educating their biggest player base.
There's almost like nothing going in. When we did the gearing guide, trying to understand the concept, we had to actually test things and pick up things. There was nothing in game telling us, okay, this is how things work right now. If you want this, you go there. The items just dropped at a certain, you know, the veteran, the champion, all of that. Nothing is really explained, and the system is not particularly simple. Sure, in function, it solves a lot of the problems that Valor had and all of that, but to address it to a new player, it took us hours and hours, and we knew what the system was just to kind of research it and try to compile information.
We tried to make like a more simple to understand guide, and even with that, we still had multiple comments. And we're not saying that, you know, people they don't just have the patience to like watch videos or whatever. However much
they shouldn't have to, though.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, we tried to make it as simple as possible, and even after looking at that, it's like, dude, this. I can still see this as being complicated for an average player. And once again, the feeling you have, or you know, this resonance you get when you hear stuff like, oh, is WoW dead, or WoW isn't like really picking up as an expansion like Dragonflight would you expect it to be picked up, is probably because of decisions like these. Not the gearing system alone, but the fact that they didn't do a good PR job on pushing that and explaining it to their fullest capacity. They are communicating great, don't get me wrong. They have like tons of like blue posts and all of that. That's all cool and dandy. But I do feel sometimes they just are addressing, you know, the niche player base, which is us and a couple of like a lot more people like from you guys watching. Reality being that there's a lot more players who are just there to like log in for 2 hours. Maybe they do a Mythic 2 or whatever. They go do world content and stuff. And then they look at their gear, right? It's still a loot-heavy game. It's an RPG, MMORPG, but you still want that loot. It's a natural progression in this game. And I feel like the average player is looking at that, is going to that vendor, and he doesn't understand, like, okay, how, why, when. Either this system has to be like further refined, and I'm pretty sure it will.
Oh yeah.
Or they have to start like really making that communication department or whatever pump out some clear, easy to read, easy to follow guidelines for that. This is just one aspect of it.
But even so, like not you're talking about the casual players, and we take the game with a different grain of salt. But sometimes we also try to like disconnect from everything and just have fun in the game. Even with that, I feel like the system will be too complicated, because there are people that are skipping the dialogue options, they're skipping the cutscenes, they're not gonna watch and read all the stuff. And by looking at it and kind of looking at most things with Dragonfly, for better or worse, they are coming from a bad state with, you know, Shadowlands. That's been mentioned too many times, but it feels like a lot of the stuff is in a testing phase. It feels like we're playing a PTR expansion. We're playing a good PTR expansion. Like, all of the changes that they're making, they're really cool. They're constantly improving on all of this stuff. I don't know how they could do a better job to like kind of sell this, but I feel like this is a step into a right direction to the future. It's just that they're not properly implementing well. Maybe it's too ambitious. Maybe that's probably why it's keeping people a little bit disconnected from the game and from the world, because there's too many things in between, like things to figure out, systems and all of that stuff, and that's probably where they're losing a lot of people.
Yeah. I have to bring up this point now, addressing like the niche player base. So people like us who are playing Mythic Plus and Mythic rating or Heroic rating, whatever the spectrum would be. There's another reality here, and we have touched this on previous videos in the past. It gets stale after some time. The core end game loop of World of Warcraft is arenas. I'm not gonna even mention RPGs. So arenas for PvP, probably solo queue to some extent, pushing Mythic Plus dungeons and raiding. And for the longest time, there isn't really a challenging, different type of gameplay loop in the game. I can always think about the Brawlers Guild, that was interesting. I can always think about the Mage Tower, that's, you know, solo content, mind you, but they had that in the past. And whenever you felt burned out by the same activities over and over, week by week, because that's what you do at endgame, you just push and push and push the same content to get higher gear. And once you get that higher gear, you're pushing, like, you know, killing the next mythic boss or pushing the next mythic plus key, but even that can get stale after a while. So what do you do then? You cannot really talk about like very engaging world content in World of Warcraft now. In the beginning of Dragonflight, you did have like all of the events all around it, but that was still kind of like moving towards progressing your character. It was cool. In Zaralak Cavern, you don't really have a lot of like world events to be engaged with. Sure, there are, but they're not that engaging and not that interesting. And I'm talking about here some other form of gameplay loop that can become challenging. That is something that is lacking. We're looking at the main core gameplay of World of Warcraft for how many years now? I think Mythic Plus was introduced in Legion, and that was like basically, okay, refreshing the dungeons, so you had that. But
yeah,
but from that you had like these three pillars. And from time to time you would see something very interesting, like a mini raid in 815, or I don't know, something like story based, like in Legion with the whole Nightborn guys and what was
the Theramore?
The Theramore, yeah.
Yeah.
That was so either some different type of content that this is the thing, and I'm talking once again about like more of the niche players of World of Warcraft, the people who after some time put it in time investment within all of the gameplay loops, they get like this stale sentiment and want to just refresh with some different stuff. Sure, you can play a different class.
Yeah,
but
we can talk about also the 10.15. They're kind of doing that with the Fractures in Time patch, where they're doing a lot of content revolving around time travel and all of the Bronze Dragonflight with the mega dungeon and all of the little items and side quests and going back in time with Arthas and doing like all sorts of cool quests. That's kind of cool. I do have a hot take about this, which might light up some fires. I think what WoW needs to keep players engaged in a loop is something akin to artifact power, but in the sense of you can grind something that can constantly elevate your playstyle to an extent, but not actual artifact power. It has to be something related to, maybe this is like another controversial example, to how Torghast was initially introduced.
Fuck that, I'm out of here. First he was borrowed power, then he was Torghast. I'm out. Fuck this shit.
Where you kind of engage into like a roguelike gameplay where you kind of scale and go to higher level and do this. It would be similar to Mythic Plus, but it could be similar. It can be just rewarding cosmetics and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of people have complained about Dragonflight that there's not enough endgame content, and I don't agree with wanting artifact power back, because that's just like a mindless, soulless grind. But there has to be something to do outside of that.
I'm just saying, a brand new gameplay loop. I'm not saying dig up what was in the past. I'm just giving examples. Listen, this worked, this worked, and this worked. If you can bring something fresh to the table, again, because we're doing the same thing at endgame for multiple years now, and something needs freshened up. Something new that can become challenging, can become leaderboardy or whatever, where people can like, etalate their skills and prominence and whatever. That's very cool for a lot of folks, and we want that. But it has to be something else. It cannot always be the same goddamn thing. You get bored after doing like 45 dungeons a week and then progressing on to the same bosses over and over. It gets stale. And I'm not saying that should be out. I'm just saying, how about adding something else that would be very refreshing, very different to do, something to like take your mind off of like all of the things you have to do on a day-by-day basis. I feel this is something that is missing and could potentially be a lifesaver for them. Be that in some sort of like role-like. They did try that with the Iskara keys or whatever with the well, that was interesting, but again,
it's just opening up chests.
Yeah, it felt like great idea, great potential.
That's that.
But
That's
like
that, that's what I mean. Some form of content that can keep on scaling, that doesn't have a particular cap, but not the old system that we had before with, you know, you constantly grind the same little increments of power. Something that kind of was cool at the moment, that was Mage Tower, something that can become like an evergreen, not necessarily an evergreen content, but content that can, you know, be a part of WoW, like how Mythic Plus became a part of WoW after Legion. It just became a thing that you do. So they can look into something like that, where we had quests and zones and that, but that's also kind of gets repetitive as well. And at that point, when you keep adding stuff like, you know, more stories, more quests, more zones, more factions to rep, there's just more on the plate of the same thing that we've been doing so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Like, think about like 3-man content, like how we used to have the whole challenge modes back in Mist of Pandaria and stuff. But, you know, obviously bring it to the difficulty and the present, like current Dragonflight, whatever. You know, when was the last time you did 3-man content PvE wise? Ooh. Yeah, that would be interesting. They would just flip it up. 2-man PvE content, you know, it's always the same thing. This is what I'm saying. People are always looking for people to fill up a 5-man group or a 10+ group for raiding and so on and so forth. How about, you know, creating something that, you know, people don't always feel comfortable, even in an MMO game. I know it's an MMO, people have to be social, blah, blah, blah. The reality is most of these nerds are not social and they are shy. This is the reality of it. You have to face it, man. And you have to, like, if you want to keep it fresh for these guys and not have the sentiment of, oh, WoW is dying or it's not picking up as it should, well, maybe you have to think about either shaking up what means to play the game after max level, or just bring in something completely new. This is all I'm saying. It's missing.
That way, and we've had like actually you've mentioned a bunch of good stuff that we had in the past. It keeps bringing me back to some of the scenario stories that we had back in BFA and in Legion
Class
as well.
Quest as well.
Yeah,
but
like the
long ones, man. You know, something really meaty over there. Like, listen, you have a class quest that fucking evolves and transforms to the whole expansion.
Yeah, so that's one thing that they did really good in Legion.
This is what I'm saying. This would be ideal. It would be like a different road. Okay, so you have your progression with your guild. You have your buddies you do Mythic Plus with or arenas, but you also have this path where it's basically your class or your spec, and you just go and find stories and find items and find cosmetics and maybe a little bit of power over there. I wouldn't mind that as well, like from patch to patch.
I mean, the amount of people that keep saying it's like, man, where do you get those skin? Oh, Mage Tower. Oh, are they gonna bring that back? No, so people are definitely invested into cosmetics that either are exclusive or just want to do content for pure cosmetics, and that can definitely be done something. And I feel like with Legion losing the class order halls, which I think was one of the coolest things, it kind of feels like there's something missing. That was such a cool identity thing where you know, were together with all of your druids in the Dream Grove there or whatever it was called, and then you just did druidy things. And I feel like that's part of the soul of the personality of Warcraft that's kind of missing. It feels like it's a lot of bland slate and everybody's pretty much the same, and like, okay, but I want to feel like a druid when I'm playing a druid, and I feel like storylines and going into all that's kind of missing. Maybe they're just focusing a lot on dragons now because it's a dragon expansion, but the whole dragon concept for us to engage with as players hasn't really been sold in Dragonflight either. Yeah. The class, first of all, and although the stories are fine, I think the aspects, the way they were built over the years, they haven't really been...
Yeah, in Dragonflight they were quite absent. I didn't really feel their presence. But okay, enough rambling. We're curious to see what you guys think. So I'm pretty sure a lot of you would be interesting to like post in the comments your ideas, regardless of where you play the game. If you're like in that niche where you're pushing above 20 keys and, you know, trying to progress Mythic, that's fine. Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you're, you know, not really into that, you know, just trying to get your daily dose of World of Warcraft, regardless of what form it takes, let us know in the comments. I think this would be a great and fruitful discussion, and who knows, maybe this will, you know, ring true to some developers in the WoW team.
Shake some beds.
Yeah, but hey, thank you for watching. Hope this was enjoyable. Do leave a like over there on the video if you liked it. Thank you, patrons, for supporting the content.
Appreciate it.
Link is in the description if you're interested. And Flame, say the ending.
Well, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.